For an effective user research study, talk to your users very carefully. In this video, we talk about 5 tips I use as a UX researcher at Microsoft to ensure my user interviews are loaded with takeaways and my team finds these sessions meaningful. Qualitative interviews are notorious for being ineffective and loaded with bias because people usually don't conduct these interviews right. It's really difficult to verify its quality and to keep a check about whether the conversation is headed in a meaningful direction or not. Having said this, I feel like no matter how long you've been taking interviews or how skilled you are in this area, there's always room to improve. I remember when I was starting out, I would conduct an interview, go back and write my notes. I would rewatch my interviews to see where I could have done better, and then I would take notes about what I need to do to improve. Alright, so 2 big pieces you must take care of is A, develop a basic habit of being a good conversationalist. Now, good conversationalist could mean a lot of things. Here I'm not talking about being charismatic or persuasive or flamboyant. Here I'm talking about being respectful, empathetic, patient, and attuned to the other person's voice, right? B is following best practices to make sure your conversation is usable for research purposes. By that, I mean make sure that you're holding a coherent trail of the conversation that you're having and keeping a track of what is the underlying message in the conversation, whether or not your research objectives and goals are being answered in some shape or form in the conversation that's been going on. Alright, this video is more of a how not to talk to users than how to talk to users. If you remove all the fluff and become super intentional about the time that you're spending with your users, you would not need this tutorial. So, alright, coming back to being a good conversationalist. A couple of things to take care of. First, take some time to build rapport with your user. They don't know you, they don't know the topic at hand, and it's highly likely that they are super intimidated to share the inner workings of their experience while they were doing something on your platform or on your compete's platform. Building rapport is particularly critical to do, especially if you're asking your users to perform certain tasks on a prototype or a product, as it may seem to them that they are being tested while a bunch of strangers helicopter over them while they perform those tasks, right? So how do you build rapport with your user? Certain things that I use on a daily basis is I would ask them where are they joining us from. This is if I don't know that already. What time is it there right now? This is if they are from a different time zone. I would ask them how was their day like so far, what does the rest of the day look like for them. I would introduce myself, I would encourage them to ask questions or share concerns, etc. Right? So I would also try to brief them about what to expect in the session today, and that is while ensuring that I do not disclose too many specifics and do not end up leading them into responding in a certain way, right? And I also try to reassure them that there are no right or wrong answers. So using phrases like that really puts them at ease, and then depending on when you sense that they are getting stressed during the session, you can reassure them again when required, right? So you will have to learn to rely on your gut feeling a little bit, read the room, understand the need of the hour, and then take some of these finer calls, right? Second tip is to use open-ended questions and talk less, listen more. Once your briefing is done, your main goal is to become attuned to how your user is feeling, what they're saying, whether they are saying things that are useful to the study or not. And if they are not, use gentle nudges to bring them back on topic or nudge them to talk about more specifics if you're trying to look for something like that, right? One thing you want to avoid is to over-explain how they should interpret your questions, or you should avoid trying to define what certain words or phrases mean. Oftentimes I've noticed that stakeholders tend to use technical jargons they use internally within their teams, and then they would have to explain it to the user gets intimidated and confused. That's a no-go. Try to simplify everything as much as possible, but not in a condescending or a patronizing manner, right? So here are some of my go-to phrases. So I would ask them things like, can you walk me through the process of selecting an electronic item when you're trying to purchase it? What does a typical window shopping session look like for you online? Can you walk me through the last time you remember going out and using the public transport? What was the incident like, right? So in case you're looking for a follow-up on something they experienced on a prototype or a platform, it would be wise to ask them questions like, what did it feel like when looking for a house to rent on this app? All of the tasks that you performed right now, did anything stand out to you as easy or difficult to do? What were the highlights and lowlights of doing X on this app? And another quick tip is, if you notice yourself trying to corner the user or customer to say something that you want to hear, stop immediately. Try to ask yourself, are you looking for the user to say something along the lines of, this felt really boring to do, or this felt super exciting to do, or I'm surprised I did not know that you could do this on the app. Try asking them a question differently. For example, you would ask them, do any feelings come up as you have discovered this tool? What are your views? My third go-to tip is to be patient, but use gentle nudges when needed. Every once in a while, I would interview a participant that has a tendency to over-explain themselves. This slows down the interview for me. I run the risk of not covering all topics. I get a lot of data, but not all of it is super useful to have. So to ensure that the time spent is efficient and loaded with takeaways, I wait for the participant to get to the point. If they take too long, I would be transparent about how much ground I have to cover. So I would say something along the lines of, you may sense I am rushing a little bit. That is because I have 7 more topics I want to get your views on in the next 30 minutes. So please bear with me as I proceed. Right? So usually a sentence like this helps the user also to get on the same page as you about the session. But having said that, also ensure that you give them enough time to think through their responses and articulate their sentences. You've got to follow up on items that are important to them, and those areas have the most amount of hidden insights, right? So talk about things that are important to them. All right, tip number 4 is to be respectful of differences and unfamiliarities. While speaking with people from different countries that have super thick accents, I struggle to understand them. Or when speaking with users that have some form of a disability, you must go slow. Alright, I quickly wanted to reiterate that I have friends that are super comfortable with talking to people with disabilities, and people that come from various walks of life have different accents. This tip is only relevant for you if you struggle with these 2 cohorts like I do. There could be other cohorts as well where you keep struggling, and going slow is a good practice, a good thing to do whenever you're stuck while moderating. So yeah, just wanted to call that out. Okay, disclaimer over, back to the video. In all of those cases, I would often ask users to talk slower or bear with me as I try to follow what they are saying. And from time to time, they'd use a word that I cannot comprehend at all. In those cases, I would request them to spell it out for me. Upfront during the session, I would like to acknowledge that I have not been exposed to a certain ethnicity, a certain culture, a type of accent, or a kind of disability, and I'll try to sort of be as respectful as possible, give them the agency to interrupt and correct me wherever I'm wrong. And the opposite happens too, where the user is unable to follow my accent. And in those cases also, it's good practice to go slow and keep checking in with the user if they are able to hear you clearly, if they are able to understand you, if they would like to go slower or faster. And in cases in case you speak with somebody whose first language is not English, be patient with them. They could be taking their time not only to recall the incident that they need to talk about, frame their thoughts, figure out the articulation. They are also trying to translate simultaneously, so it's okay to go slower in those cases. Allow them to take their time to respond to you. Alright, the fifth most important point is to follow up and critically investigate. A good practice is to follow up on words or phrases that you don't know the meanings to. For example, if a user says, "Making a meal in the air fryer is a stressful event for me," ask them what makes them say that. If they say they like or dislike something, follow up on what makes them say that. It is important to have clarity about their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. If something they have said earlier in the session does not match with what they are saying right now, dig deeper. In those cases, I would ask them, "I recall you mentioned cooking is a therapeutic event for you. What about making a meal in the air fryer causes distress?" In this case, it's important to know if the air fryer is the cause of distress, or is it the way they have set up the appliance on their kitchen platform, etc. So point out inconsistencies and investigate to develop a coherent narrative about the user's experience with cooking or kitchen appliances or whatever the topic of your research is. So this is all I had for you today. I hope you have a wonderfully meaningful time taking user interviews, and thank you so much for joining me. Stay tuned to learn more.